It's bug season. Heck, who am I kidding? It's always bug season in Texas. And that's why you need Grandeur Pest Solutions in your corner. They're locally owned and operated. They're trained, they're trustworthy, and they have a proven record as they have been in business for almost 10 years. They provide pest control against ants, bed bugs, bees, roaches, fleas, wasps, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. If it crawls and you don't like it, they're probably going to take care of it for you. Now, they serve all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're locally owned. These two guys have been running this business since 2013, and every year they get bigger and bigger. But you know what they still do? They still have great customer service. In fact, if you get a hold of them, they're usually going to have your quote and your job ready to go within 48 hours. That's pretty good. Now, you can call them for a free estimate at 469-809-1769. You can find them online at Grandeur4, that's the number 4, shore.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Grandeur Pet Solutions, and we are so happy that they're title sponsor for OutDrank The Coverage in 2023. L4 Media, we talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie, and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. So like and subscribe and check us out.
Here we go! Buck, here we go! 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 Here we go!
Hey, who's going to win the Super Bowl? Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett, intern Noe. OutDrank The Coverage right here on L4 Media, brought to you by Grandeur Pest Solutions. As we're going to be talking, we're actually doing two shows today, so if you look up and around, you'll see the special one we're going to be doing where we talk about the impact and the careers of Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, and Nick Saban. And, yeah, we understand that one or two or maybe all three aren't quite done, but we kind of felt the reason I wanted to make that show, intern Noah, before we get into everything is I've tried to rack my brain. I don't know if we've ever had three truly, maybe the three iconic coaches of an era, all at least temporarily not have a job at the exact same offseason. I can't remember a time like that because Lombardi, Allen, Landry, Shula, Parcells, and then Parcells, and then Parcells again. All of them retired at different or were fired at different junctions of time. I don't ever remember there being this three in one offseason.
Yeah, when you wanted to do this show, it made me want to go back and think about any other sport where this happened, and I really couldn't think of any. The only thing I can think of is a dynasty crumbling in one season, like the 98 Bulls.
Yeah.
Going into 99 Bulls, but that's just player or coach and personnel. So, yeah, I can't think of another time where three all-time great coaches, and you really don't know, like you can really debate who's the best coach out of the three.
And we will. That's part of that show. That's kind of why I wanted to have that show because I think without spoiling it, I think the person who might be actually the greatest of the three might surprise. My opinion might surprise some people because of just where you look at all of them. And you and I have talked about that before. But anyway, that's what we're going to be doing on that show. So look up or down or all around. That show will be up around the same time that this one is. Speaking of, it's our Noe. How are you today? What are you drinking?
I'm doing well, sir. Today I'm drinking, in honor of our upcoming show on coaches, I wanted to drink one of my all-time favorite bourbons.
All right.
Old Forester 1920 Prohibition style. It's 115 proof, so 57.5% alcohol.
Ooh, send me a glass for Sunday.
Oh, yeah, I have a whole bottle for you.
There you go.
Yeah, it's brown sugar notes. It's so good.
You know what I like, that brown sugar.
How about you, buddy? How are you doing, and what are you drinking?
I'm doing well. I'm finally. I sent you a draft projection. I'm kind of starting to, as a Cowboy fan, finally move on. You know, I know people will roll their eyes, but I personally was a little bit happy that Jerry Jones basically said at the Senior Bowl that they're all in this year. There's no, at least in terms of building this roster. It's all about this year. And this is the Super Bowl preview show, but we're also this is our weekly NFL show. So we're going to go ahead and get into some of that right now. I want to get into that. I think he's telling us, this is my personal opinion, I think Jerry Jones is announcing that they will not sign Dak to anything this year. They're going to ride with that $50 million cap for 1 year, because if I'm not mistaken, everybody's in place that they need to be in place. Now, we can talk about CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons extensions, but that's funny numbers. You can play with that. You can punt till next year on all that. And I just kind of wonder if we're going to maybe see a Derrick Henry, maybe see a DeAndre Hopkins, and maybe truly see Dallas try to load up for a 1 year thing.
Yeah, when Derrick Henry did that post-game speech in front of his fans in Tennessee, it signaled to me that his time there is going to be over. And a very logical spot would be the Cowboys, since they were really lacking in short yardage situations during the 2023 season. So, yeah, I would like Derrick Henry as a Cowboy, and I think it makes the most sense. But, yeah, hearing Jerry Jones say that, and I was joking with you, but not joking, it kind of reminded me of the 93 Oilers, where they kind of went all in on that season, and you know how that turned out. I don't think the in-season drama that team had is going to be the same, but I think they're going to have a really good season if they really are all in.
Well, the thing that concerns me is this turned into the 2008 season where they went all in with Pac-Man Jones and Tank Johnson. Now, we can argue with maybe those weren't the right people that you go all in with. Pac-Man Jones was starting to kind of clean his act up, but he was still doing Pac-Man Jones things. He was just fresh off that paralyzing that guy at a strip club that just, for all the talk about like Ray Lewis whatever happened with that Super Bowl, the thing with Pac-Man Jones and that strip club, just for some reason, just kind of got swept under the rug. If you actually go back, and it's pretty crappy. But Tank Johnson, the old Chicago defensive lineman, who seemed like he played fine over here, but then he said a lot of things at the end that made it seem like he was just there for the money. Anyway, point is, I like it. If nothing else, it's just to change things up. It might not work. I don't even think it will work. I'm beginning to understand that the gods have said, hey, y'all went to 8 Super Bowls in the first 50 years of Super Bowls, so just chill y'all's roll back. We'll see y'all in 30 years. Oh, wait, we are at 30 years. Son of a bitch. I just like it something different. And I like that if you do it right, you still come out of it ready to go. Like, if you do it right, whether you sign Dak, and if they announce tomorrow that they've signed Dak to a 5-year deal, I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't have a problem with Dak Prescott at quarterback.
Having said all that, you haven't told me what you're drinking.
Oh, yeah, I'm drinking Dr. Pepper and sadness. No, I'm just drinking Dr. Pepper with a splash of Malibu rum. I'm kind of saving my drinking because Sunday, you and I are getting together for the Super Bowl. And I plan on getting, as the white ladies of East Texas once said before the Battle of the Alamo, I'm getting tore up from the floor up at your house. Speaking of, real quick, programming note, we're going to try something next week. We're going to live stream our reaction show to the Super Bowl. It'll be probably Monday afternoon, Monday night-ish. I don't think we'd get a lot of people at 1 o'clock on a Monday, but we'll give you the details of that. But we're just going to try to do that. We might start a once-a-month live stream show where we just kind of get on like this and just talk about the NFL with no real, usually we have show notes and stuff. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the show notes. Where do you want to start? Of course, we're going to do the Super Bowl in the second segment. Let's talk about the coaching stuff. Do you want to start with the Cowboys, as Dan Quinn, former Dallas Cowboy defensive coordinator, is now the head coach of the Washington Commanders? Okay. I don't know, man. I kind of thought Washington, new owners, rumors that they might want to play around with the name again, not the Redskins, but just change the name. They're already looking at possibly a new stadium, which FedEx is one of those that just got built at the worst time. It immediately was obsolete 1 year into being a stadium. I really thought that they might go with a home run. Oh my God, a Bill Belichick or some wonderkin hire. Dan Quinn just doesn't move the needle for me.
And I wonder if they're waiting for somebody else to be available in 2025 because, I agree with you 100%. I really don't see the reason why they would hire Dan Quinn. I know stat-wise, the Cowboys looked great on defense for the 3 years he was here, and I know he took Atlanta to the Super Bowl and almost won that. But I look at the other stuff. I look at the downfall in Atlanta. What he took that 2016 team. You remove the coordinators. barely makes the playoffs the next year, and then slowly start getting worse and worse. And you still have a great quarterback in Matt Ryan, and he just could not capitalize on that Super Bowl appearance. And then with the Cowboys, honestly, all 3 years he was consistent. He told us, he showed us who he was. He was a guy that could pad stats against bad teams, and then his defense looked mediocre against good to great teams.
Yeah, and there's going to always be a little bit of that. That's what happens when you play good teams. When good teams play good teams, both teams usually come to the means. That's why we were talking about sometimes when you get these great matchups, it turns into an ugly game because these two teams are just, they know each other so well or they've game planned so well. But with Quinn, I cannot tell you. And I think the moment I knew Dallas was in trouble, and this is no joke, the moment I knew Dallas was in trouble against Green Bay is when Green Bay won the toss and took the ball. Because how many times have I told you the most frustrating thing about Dan Quinn was that first drive, it seemed like Dallas always gave up points against good teams. And we can debate Dak and we can debate the offense, and it had a lot of faults in that Packer game, but I still contend that Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott, if you want to say what they did was choke, I don't think it was choke. I think they pressed because they realized pretty quick our defense isn't going to make stops today.
Yeah, looking back, I think I do agree with you on there. Just for a while, I couldn't believe it because they've been here before. They've hosted a playoff game during this run with McCarthy and Prescott. They've hosted a playoff game. They've won a playoff game. They ended Tom Brady's career. I mean, that's a big hurdle to overcome. I think they were 0.
It did it dominatingly too. It wasn't, I mean, that game was close for like a quarter, and then Dallas just absolutely dominated them.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering why. I guess they just felt the pressure of getting to the conference championship game because now the path was there. The path was as easy as it ever could be. You're playing a 7 seed Green Bay in the short history of the 7-team playoff. No 7 seed has ever won.
Yeah,
7 seed won, and then make it to the next round. You're playing Detroit. Detroit, they have only won one game in the playoffs in the last 57 years. Like, it was against the Cowboys, but yeah, I don't get why. Well, I guess longer than 57 years, but yeah, I don't get why they were pressing that much.
I think it's simply because of the defense. I really do. I think they realized pretty quick that they were going to have to match Green Bay score for score. And what that to me, going back, I rewatched that game. That was tough. I rewatched that game, and seriously, Dallas gave up running on first down because they looked more like Dallas at the beginning of the year when he was so big about we're going to run. And what would happen? And people forget about the Giants. The offense didn't look that great in the first game, but you're like, oh, it was raining really bad against the Jets. The offense didn't look really that great. Well, yeah, it's the Jets. They're actually better than you think. And then you had the Arizona loss, and then you had the Niner loss, and then Mike McCarthy said, we've got to make some changes offensively. And that's when the offense took off. They started throwing the ball on first down. They started throwing the ball down the field on first down. They started setting up the run with the pass. We were doing great like that. That was working. Get into the Packers, first drive Packers. I know Dallas got a sack on that second down, but the penalty erased it, and then the Packers literally just went through the Dallas defense like hot knife into butter. I think at that moment, Mike McCarthy said, shit. And he shouldn't have. He should have stuck with, you know what? Okay, we'll get in a shootout. Because I do think Dallas's offense was good enough to get into a shootout. But for some reason, that scared that offense. Now, we'll see what they do defensively. They're actually interviewing today. Joe Witt took his name out of the running so he could become the defensive coordinator for Washington, going with Dan Quinn. I understand that, dude. The hardest thing for Mike McCarthy is going to be finding coaches because he's only got a year. He doesn't have, he's a lame duck coach. So I get Joe Witt saying, you know what, I'm going to go where at least I know I probably have 2 years.
That could very well be the case. That makes perfect sense. McCarthy's in Dallas are interviewing people today for the head coaching, for the defensive coordinator job. I personally like Zimmer for the role. It might be a few years too late for him to have a second stint with the Cowboys, but I've always liked his defenses. And then go back to what you said about the Cowboys offense taking off. It's like I said, man, it was taking off right when they were playing inferior teams.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
That I know they were not playing well against the Giants and the Jets. Those were blowouts.
Yeah.
But to me, it still just coincided with them playing inferior opponents. I still think Dak is a quarterback that can lead a
Well,
team
wouldn't
to
you
a
call
Super Bowl.
Packers defense an inferior opponent?
Well, they're the defensive coordinator at the time. I guess you could make that argument. Now he's fired, but some reason Joe Barry looked fantastic as a defensive coordinator in that game.
Again, I still go back to that. That's where the fun argument is I think it was more Dallas being just I don't know. They allowed Green Bay to get them out of their game plan. And I think that's the thing that if you're talking with Mike McCarthy and Schottenheimer going forward as your guys, you've got to be like, hey, you got to stick with whatever we decide. We got to stick with it. And I don't get Quinn going into the zone. I mean, I get it. Stephon Gilmore is hurt, and you realized after that game, Gilmore, that shoulder, if that wasn't a playoff game, he probably doesn't play. You could tell he is not used to wearing that harness. There was a couple times rewatching where there were chances for him to swat the ball down with that arm, and you could see the lift, and then you could see the immediate pull down, which means the shoulder just wasn't working for him. Maybe that's why. I don't know. It just felt weird. Like if 10 years from now it came out that the coaching staff for Dallas was paid off, I would believe it because it looked like a movie where the twist is Dan Quinn's is secretly going over to Green Bay, and it didn't look right. Anyway, so let's go to other coaching things. Of course, we talked a little bit about it. Jim Harbaugh is the head coach of the Chargers. Antonio Pierce will stay with the Raiders. Jared Mayo with the Patriots. Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan goes to the Titans. More and more I read about that. Apparently, that's a really good. Like a lot of people think that's a great hire. Same thing with Dave Canales to Carolina. Apparently, that's a lot of people are calling that a home run hire because he's not big enough to have expectations, so he'll get time to build his franchise. So we'll see. And then Raheem Morris to Atlanta. That's the one that's intriguing me the most because that's the one that could be either they're just continuing to be a 3-13 franchise, or does he turn them back around? Because, man, Atlanta's roster is really, really nice.
It's really nice, and I like what Morris did with the Rams defense this past season. It was really just Aaron Donald and a bunch of no-names, and those no-names started to become names this season. So I really liked what he did there. I liked some of his stint with the Buccaneers and his first head coaching job. He actually was the interim coach after Dan Quinn was fired with the Falcons in 2020. So he had some recent head coaching experience. So I guess it was good enough for Arthur Blank to want to give him a shot. I think he inherits a really good team. I think they'll focus more. Going into the season, I thought they were going to focus on Bijan. And he almost hit the projection I thought he would. But I think there'll be more of an emphasis on Bijan, especially on a rookie contract, to get him 1,700 combined yards. Tyler Algier. It's really good young offensive talent.
They just need a quarterback, man.
London. Yeah, Pitts, London, solid offensive line. You need a quarterback. I'm not sure how they're going to address that. Maybe in the draft, maybe free agency. I'm thinking draft. I'm not sure what pick they have right now, but they have a good enough defense. And
I don't know, man. Russell Wilson just seems like a fit there.
Some people say Dak Prescott's a fit there.
Dak's not. I mean, look. Yeah, if Dallas were to trade Dak, that would be one of the biggest shockers. That ain't happening, folks. A, he has a no trade clause. B, I legitimately don't think Jerry Jones is at that point yet. The only reason I think that he would do the salary cap move now is simply if this doesn't work and I'm going to have to change out, I'm changing it all out. I'm not doing the quarterback without the coach. This next one will be quarterback and coach hand in hand. Or quarterback and offensive coordinator hand in hand if they do what teams normally do and they hire the opposite of, we got Mike McCarthy, the offensive guy. You would assume if they have to make a change after this year, it might be more defensive. You talk about Mike Zimmer. I like Zimmer. I'm just worried that his defenses have all been more predicated on the it's not that they're not aggressive, but they're more of let's not give up big plays. And I'm fine with that, but I still think the key to this offense or this defense is you've got to let Micah Parsons do Micah Parsons things. You cannot. I think at times Dan Quinn put him too much as a pass rusher. I'm worried that somebody like Mike Zimmer might be too much about him as just a standard off the ball linebacker that might get 130 tackles, but like, what is his real impact going to be on the game? Because that's still the knock you have with Roquan Smith. As great as he is for the Ravens, you can take him out of that game plan just by simply going away from him. I don't want Micah Parsons to get boxed in.
Yeah, the good thing about the Ravens linebacker duo, I'm not sure if Patrick Queen's staying, but Patrick Queen,
Queen's a stud.
He's a stud, but he became a megastar once Roquan Smith got there, because Roquan Smith is more of a run stuffing linebacker.
Yep.
Patrick Queen's more of a pass defending linebacker, and they worked hand in hand. If you run the ball away from Roquan Smith, then yeah, you can start seeing some holes in the Ravens defense. And there might be more holes now with Mike McDonald going to the Seahawks to become the head coach.
I like that move. I like that move for them and Seahawks. With Seahawks, it kind of keeps them kind of in the same idea of what they're doing. Of course, we'll talk about Seahawks in the next show with Pete Carroll. But yeah, I think that allows them to kind of keep doing the same thing, but also turn the page, which was what I thought would be the mistake, is if Seattle hired Dan Quinn. Okay, you're getting rid of Pete Carroll, but you're bringing in a disciple of his. So what actually changes? You're going to still have the same thought process. And I do want to make sure I understand. I don't think Dan Quinn's a terrible coach. I think Dan Quinn, I don't think he's going to be a great head coach, but that's not a knock on him. It's just like when he got Atlanta offensively was already baked. They're kind of like where they are now, except for then they had the quarterback and the offense. They just needed defense. Now they have everything but a quarterback. I just don't see Quinn going into Washington and tearing things down and building it back up.
Well, with their offensive coordinator hire of Cliff Kingsbury, who was Caleb Williams' coach at USC, do you think Washington uses their number 2 pick on Caleb Williams?
I mean, but doesn't all that get just completely washed away if the Bears take Williams, which is still, I think, a 50-50 deal?
If they take Williams, do you think Justin Fields will have already been traded by that point?
Yeah, I think you have to. In fact, I think it would be part of that. It would be a draft day trade type thing. I think if you're the Bears, that's a good one. I think if you're the Bears, you have to announce it either right before the trade or right before your first pick. It doesn't have to be a first pick trade, of course. I don't think, because once you draft Caleb Williams, the draft value or the trade value on Justin Fields plummets. You've got to do it before.
It seems the Raiders might be interested, especially since they hired Luke Getsy, who was the Bears' offensive coordinator, to be their offensive coordinator.
Oh, I like Justin Fields. You and I were talking about this. I felt the mistake that they made this year with the Bears was they spent the whole offseason saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and then they didn't do it. Their offense in the first 6 weeks looked exactly like last year. Finally, like week 9, they finally were just like, screw it, let's just run Justin Fields. And boom, the Bears almost crawled their way back into playoff contention. They were a competitive team. That's why I'm still saying, and maybe that's his fool's gold, though. You know, there's some quarterbacks that always do that. They always struggle early. Whoa, we got a San Francisco collapse. They always struggle early, and then they get hot late, and so you always think they're going to be better. But I would trust Justin Fields one more year.
If the Raiders get him, great for them. I think that's a great move, just because you saw what Justin Fields could do with Cole Kmet. And now he has Michael Mayer.
And DJ Moore.
Sorry. DJ Moore had a great year. But now you see the Raiders, they have Michael Mayer. They got Jacoby Myers. They got Devontae Adams. And they got Renfro, who's not even used anymore. And 2 years ago, he kind of basically put the team on his back and got him into the playoffs.
Years ago. Yeah. I don't think Devontae Adams will be there. I think more and more Devontae to New Orleans or Devontae to the Jets or maybe even Dallas seems reasonable. I think Dallas, just kind of tying us back into the Cowboys, I think Dallas, like if they want to keep Brandon Cooks, that's fine, but I still think they need a number 2. I like I sent you what Mel Kiper, and right now he had the Florida State wide receiver. I love that move. I don't know if I want it in the first round, but I'd still love that move. Let's see, looking. Oh, hey, let's talk about Dallas, the East. We talked about Dan Quinn to Washington. We talked a little bit about this last week. Kellen Moore is now officially the Eagles offensive coordinator. So I will say this. If you're Dallas, you're looking at the Washington coaches and you're looking at the Philadelphia coaches and you're going, we're still maybe the better coaching staff. The Kellen Moore one, I think he'll do perfectly fine with Philly, but I don't think Dallas is quaking in their boots about it.
Not at all. We know Kellen Moore. We know his ceiling, and I kind of saw it with the Chargers. They kind of were the same as the Cowboys were, except they had more injuries, so they weren't as effective. Yeah, he had some good games against the Dolphins and Lions, but then he had that 6-0 game against the Patriots. I know weather was a factor, but whatever. If the Eagles think he has something, then great. I really think, just like with Dan Quinn, he's kind of like Dan Quinn, but on the offensive side.
Yeah.
He's exactly, you're going to get a lot of points against inferior opponents, and he's going to struggle with critical gameplay situations against good to great teams.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it right there. You're gonna, in one of the games against the Cowboys, he might look amazing, and the Eagles put up 35 points, and then in the rematch, you'll realize, oh shit, he's doing the same 5 plays. Here we go, we got this.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Leslie Frazier named to the Seattle assistant head coaching job. We had talked about it earlier. There was that guy from the Go Deep blog that wrote about Sean McDermott and Buffalo and a lot of the underneath things that were going on. And one of them was Leslie Frazier wasn't ready to take a year off. And we can kind of see that probably was the case. I think this is a brilliant move for Seattle. I know some people will say, well, as a young head coach, you've got a guy right there that can undercut you. And that's true. But anything about Leslie Frazier tells me that he's not that type of coach. Whether he ends up taking over for Mike Macdonald, if he doesn't make it, he will be there to help Mike Macdonald and try to make sure Mike Macdonald's Seahawks survive. Frazier's one of those I'd love for the Cowboys to have as a coach one day. Not as a head coach, maybe.
Yeah, I think he has a great football mind. I wouldn't mind that at all. Just announced right when we started our show that Jay Harbaugh has been hired by the Seahawks as their special teams coach. They still haven't hired an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. Eric Bieniemy is still available. I'd be interested to see what he would do in Seattle with Geno and all that talent they have there.
Dude, yeah. I mean, man, I didn't even think about that. That's a little scary if he can bring a little bit of that Andy Reid philosophy to Seattle, which Geno, by the way, he kind of started slow, but he kind of bounced back and turned his season around and kind of made that 3-year deal. Like, okay, we can see him for the next 2 years. So, yeah, that's a good one. Trying to see here other ones. Oh, Steve Belichick. A lot of people thought that he might be a hot name at defensive coordinator or even possibly head coach. He instead is going to University of Washington. That one confuses me. Like, that tells me that he had no NFL job, because not only are you going back to college, but you're going to a University of Washington team that might, as bad as TCU was last year after winning it or going to a national championship, Washington might win 3 games this year because they've lost everything. They've literally lost the most roster that any national championship team that had played in a national championship the year before that wasn't graduating. They've lost the most. You've lost your coach. I don't know. This is just a weird move for me.
Yeah. I know they got the transfer from Mississippi State, Will Rogers. I think he's going there.
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to be enough.
It won't be enough. It'll just be for 1 year.
And I say they'll win 3. The Big Ten has enough bottom feeders that I think Washington will still win 8, 9 games, might even flirt with that top 12. But I don't know. This just feels like a move, like maybe it's just him doing like Bieniemy and like, I need to get out of the shadow of my dad completely for a couple of years. And because he has a very supposedly a very good reputation among coaches. Like, people think that, yeah, he's a real good coach. He's not just Bill Belichick's son. Patrick Mahomes Sr. arrested in Tyler on DWI charges. Quietly his 3rd one. He's going to have to go to jail. Like, he's going to serve jail for this. And this is one of those things that, just kind of has gotten missed. And I will say, I think it's 3 DWIs over like 25 years. It's not like all in the last year or something. But I just think when you look at Patrick Mahomes' wife, Patrick Mahomes' brother, you just realize that guy can just, nothing bothers him. And I mean that as a positive. Like, he's just able, whatever's happening in life, he's able to set that aside when he goes on the football field.
It is amazing. drama. I don't know. He's more minor with his wife, but his brother just trying to capitalize on Patrick's fame.
Yeah.
He's been in trouble. That his brother and his dad are like one and the same. Unfortunately, at least his dad had some success. I remember him with the Rangers back in the day.
Yeah.
It's just weird. Like he's around these negative media generating people, but he's still able to overcome and shine and focus on being. He's on track to being the greatest football player of all time. I thought Tom Brady would have that mantle for at least a few decades, but I mean that's about to get surpassed if Mahomes plays another 10 years like this.
I'm sorry, you spelled Steve Pelluer wrong?
Oh, I'm my bad.
Steve Pelluer.
Old Cowboy quarterback.
One of the mistakes of Landry. That we're gonna have a show actually, not this off season, but one off season. I actually meant to tell you about this earlier today. Hey, I'm telling you now, Noe. We're gonna have a show called The Mistakes of Landry. We're gonna point out 5 big dynasty transforming mistakes that Tom Landry made, because there's some really interesting ones. Like
there's enough diehard Landry fans around still, so I'm just gonna say this is your idea, not
yes,
mine.
it is. Hey, I lived through the Landry era. Okay,
you did.
I was there in 1981. I got the idea because somebody did that on Don Shula, and Don Shula's the same way. Like both of them have great careers. Yeah. But both of them left 3 or 4 Super Bowls on the table if they'd have just done what at the time seemed like common sense decisions, and they just never would do it. For Shula, getting a running game for Dan Marino, that kind of things. But anyway, let's see before we get into the World Series. Hey, the Rangers won. That's all you need to know. Let's see. Oh, Richard Castor, former tight end, Pro Bowl tight end for the Jets, passed away in his sleep at 75. That's a good way to go. Not that young, but you and I always talk about when somebody hits like 80 and above, we always say that's a good life. You lived a good life. And to die in your sleep, it's a lot better than the other ways you can go.
He has a bunch of kids and grandkids, and one of his sons is actually a wrestler for All Elite Wrestling. I guess apparently a pretty good one, Max Caster.
Oh, that's his son?
That's his son. Yeah, I didn't even know that.
I've never watched him, but I've heard the name. You and I still, we don't watch wrestling like we used to, but we might. That might be something OutDrank the Coverage picks up over the next. So I love these shows because we have all the time in the world. I actually ended up watching a replay of the Royal Rumble.
Oh, how was it?
It's shit, but it was still fun. I mean, it was still fun. It was just shit because I feel like Cody Rhodes was 5 years ago, and he never quite got the push he needed 5 years ago. So now, and that's just what wrestling does. It's 5 years later, but just watching the Royal Rumble was kind of fun again. Like I did miss that. So maybe we brought, we have our NETSN, they have their wrestling show. Me and Sweeney, we've been talking. Me and you might have to do a run in on them one day and just show up on their show and everything. But anyway, let's see here. Joe Witt, Ravens DL and associate head coach Anthony Weaver. Now, are you saying he goes to the Dolphins or he's going to the Ravens?
Anthony Weaver was the D-line coach and assistant head coach for the Ravens.
Oh, so he's the coordinator.
Yeah, so Fangio left the Dolphins to go to the Eagles.
Talk about that. That was a little interesting. Like that felt like maybe, I don't know, maybe there was some not as loud as Wink Martindale and Brian DeBall for the Giants, but you just wonder if Vic and because I got to admit, McDaniel does seem like one of those that probably rubs the old way, the old liners and all. He probably kind of rubs them the wrong way. I could, not on purpose, but he's that type of guy. He's young, he's arrogant, he wears goofy clothes on the side, and I could see Vic that's not the way we practiced back in 1983. Did
you ever watch this season of Hard Knocks with the Dolphins?
No, I never did. I just can't get into those anymore. Did you?
I watched them. I didn't finish it yet. Since the season's over for them, I'm going to go back and finish the last few episodes. But if you see his mannerisms, I didn't realize how. I'm not saying he's on the spectrum. But I mean, he seems.
I agree 100%.
He seems like he doesn't fit. A genius offensive mind. It just seems like he doesn't fit with the team.
The funny thing is that's exactly what they said about Bill Walsh.
Yeah,
Bill Walsh was very weird for that time. Now you look back, he's just like an old time coach. But what he was doing for the Niners and how he was doing it, and also if you just read some of like his his fears and things that, stressed him out. You're just like, golly, dude, you've won 2 Super Bowls and you have one bad year and you're ready to fire everybody and trade everybody. But yeah, I agree with you on that. I think but I think that's what, when you have innovators, that's usually how they are. They're usually a little off compared to what the norm is doing in that era, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, we can go to color commentary and just play-by-play with Howard Cosell.
Yeah.
He really didn't fit in with the bros, the boys, but I mean, he's an all-time great trendsetter.
And that was always a problem with him. He always felt like he was an outsider. And there's that really, it means well, and I enjoy it, from TNT about the Monday night show. It was done like in 2002 or 2003, and it's done really bad. It's really cheap. It's the football videos. I don't know why they didn't just get some ABC 70s NFL, but they're trying to like have regular people wearing uniforms, and you can tell the uniform's really bad. But the actual story of the Monday night team from the 70s is interesting. John Turturro plays Howard Cosell, and that was one of his biggest things, is why he never felt he fit in, because he wasn't one of the guys. So that's a good point. So now on that show, does it show like him and Vic having any issues, or?
As far as I can tell from the few episodes I've watched, no. I don't even see Fangio in there at all. It's more focused on him. Okay. Tyreek Hill. I think I stopped watching the week of the house burning.
Oh, okay.
Tyreek Hill's house burning.
Yeah. I am a little worried as a Cowboy fan of him going to the Eagles. Vic Fangio, I trust him, but I will say this: just like any coach, he can be beat. He's not a defensive coordinator that all of a sudden, Philly's going to be pitching 6 or 7 shutouts. So they still have deficiencies that they're going to have to figure out. All right. Any other thing before we hit the Super Bowl stuff?
The UFL.
The UFL. Go ahead.
They released their 43-game schedule for the season. And, of course, it's going to start with the USFL champion versus the XFL champion, the Arlington Renegades.
I think, first off, brilliant to start it that way.
Yeah.
I have not looked how they've done this. I think if they have enough teams in both divisions, they need to keep the 2 leagues apart and only play them in a championship game. I think that would be fun, but I don't think they have enough teams. I think they only have 8 teams. So unless you're only, I guess if you crossed over for 2 games and then you played, your conference or division twice, I guess you could get 10 games out of there, or 9 games out of it. I don't know. I still don't care. I mean, it was cool when Arlington won it, but it was also like they were 5-7, and they made a trade, and a great trade. Luis Perez, you can make the case that in those 5 games he could have been the league MVP, because he literally changed them from a team that couldn't score to a team that couldn't be stopped. But they still were 5-7 going into the playoffs. Anyway, let's get into it. You ready to talk a little football? You ready to talk a little Cowboy? Oh, wait, no, we're talking Super Bowl. Damn it, bitch.
Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
All right, Sunday, Kansas City 14-6 versus San Francisco 14-5. This game is in Las Vegas. I don't like the fact that people are starting to call that the Death Star. There's only one Death Star. Well, actually, I guess technically in the Star Wars, there's like 20 Death Stars apparently, but it's going to be in Las Vegas. I am making the call now. In 15 years, the Super Bowl will just always be in Vegas.
Why do you say that?
Because I mean, it's the town that where you want to. Everybody wants to go there for a weekend. Look. The Dallas has strip clubs. Miami has the regular clubs and strip clubs. Atlanta has all the strip clubs. LA has all the cocaine. Las Vegas has it all, like all in one. I feel like Las Vegas, and I think that's the one mistake all the leagues probably did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, is they should have always put all the things in it, Las Vegas, and then it could have just been a party hub. Now they want teams as well. But I mean, if I'm a Cowboy fan, I would fly up to Vegas just to spend the weekend, even if I wasn't going to the Super Bowl, if Dallas was there.
That is a good point. And the thing I do like about Allegiant Stadium is it's right outside of Vegas in Paradise. What I noticed there were complaints about last year, about September, October, was when Formula One came into town.
Yeah.
Formula One, their track. I was there late August, for just going for a vacation with some other coworkers of mine. And what I noticed was it was just bad. Like the way it was designed, it was just going to be a cluster.
And it was
along the strip, and everybody was complaining about it. What they were fearing is exactly what happened. A lot of cab drivers were, just angry because they couldn't really make any money. And
Yeah.
Everything was blocked off. It was just, and not. It was in a terrible location. But the thing I like about the stadium, the football stadium, is right outside the strip. It's right outside the busy area, so people can like drive out to there while also enjoying the Vegas life.
That's a good way to put it. Hang on. Wait. Huh. I don't see my invite to Vegas from you. Must have left it in my other studio. So a lot of people have been kind of like, on this one. And you and I were talking about that before we started recording. I don't know. You and I grew up in a different era. Like the one thing that I have missed over the last 25 years is teams playing in multiple Super Bowls against each other. And I know people will point to the Giants and the Patriots, but that oddly, even though the Giants beat them both times, they both were so flukish that nobody really counts that as like, oh, that was a rematch and a rivalry, This feels like, honestly, this feels like these two teams might see each other 2 more times after this easily.
Yeah, they're both teams are young enough at the right positions to where they'll still be competitive and maybe even make more Super Bowl appearances against each other. With the Giants and Patriots, the Giants did the one thing that no other team could do. They had 4 guys that could get to the quarterback.
Yep.
Now, the reason why the Giants were always mediocre during that time period is just because their offense would usually self-destruct.
Eli Manning shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
But he has 2 Super Bowl rings, and he played for 15, 16 years.
He literally has like a 100 and 100. I don't know. It's not that high, but he's literally a 500 quarterback.
Yeah.
That's the thing that drives you crazy when you look at that kind of stuff, where we've gotten better as a fandom on the Hall of Fame and rings, but that still carries too much weight. I have nothing against Eli Manning. He beat the Cowboys enough, and of course, 07. But Dallas also beat him enough to where it never like, oh God, it's Eli Manning and the Giants. I don't look at him and say Hall of Fame quarterback. Now he'll get in also because he's doing all the media stuff now, and he's got a good personality. I'm fine with that. But anyway, what are your early thoughts before we get into the points? Before we get into all the minutia of this game, what is your early thoughts on what's going to happen Sunday?
I think that the Chiefs defense will shut down the 49ers on offense. I'm going to go with the team that has the better quarterback. I keep betting against the Chiefs, and I keep losing. So in this one, I have to go with the team with the all-time great quarterback. I think the Chiefs beat the 49ers again.
All right, let's go ahead and now break into it. I agree with you, but we'll get to why. Points scored on the year. San Francisco is 3rd in the NFL, 28 points. Kansas City, oddly enough, 15th at 21 points. Offensive yard rank, San Francisco 2nd, 398 yards a game. Kansas City 9th at 350 yards a game. Passing yards, this one was the most surprising. San Francisco 4th at 257 yards. Kansas City 6th at 246 yards. And then rushing, this one's odd to me. Not San Francisco, 140 yards a game. They're 3rd. That's fine. Kansas City is sneaky. They're 19th with only 104 yards a game. But you go back and you look, just like in the AFC title game, they only ran for like 2.8 yards a carry, but every time they needed 5 yards, they got 5 yards. Now, the other 3 carries after that would be 1 yard, 1 yard, 1 yard, but then it'd be a 2nd and 6, and Pacheco would get 7 yards. So the run doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm telling you that Kansas City run defense is way deadlier than people give them credit for.
Oh, yeah. They get the Pacheco gets the yards when he needs it. Yeah, and I really think that's really what matters, especially with a team that has a superior defense like the Chiefs do right now. If you look at these stats, I'm a stats guy. I love stats. But if you look at the stats, you would think that the 49ers are winning by a couple of touchdowns.
Yeah.
But again, especially when you look at the turnover differential, I had to do a double take when I saw this. I mean,
wow.
The Chiefs have a -11. turnover differential, while the 49ers have a +10. The 49ers one is not the shocking one. It's the Chiefs one that they have not generated the turnovers that they used to back in the day. But their defense is stout, and they keep teams out of the end zone. They're second in the league in points allowed at 17.3 per game.
Fourth in the league at points yards allowed. 18th in the league at rushing yards allowed. But again, that kind of goes with that Dallas thing of with their offense when the Chiefs offense is putting a couple touchdowns up and you're up 14-3, you're forcing the team to stop running. Now, San Francisco won't stop running. Let's go ahead and say that. And while I agree with you, I do think Kansas City wins this game. I definitely see a path for San Francisco to win the game if Kansas City turns the ball over. If Kansas City struggles like they did in the first 2.5 quarters against the Niners in the first Super Bowl, I just don't see a way. I say this, and they almost, they've spit the bit almost a couple other times. I just don't see a Kyle Shanahan team once again losing a big lead in a Super Bowl and losing Super Bowl. Because if that happens a third time, because remember, he was the offensive coordinator with Atlanta. If that happens a third time, then you start getting labeled a certain way.
The good thing, what's on his side is the fact that no Shanahan has gone to the Super Bowl with the McCaffrey and lost. That was his problem in 2019.
That's the most random thing. Why do you gotta have McCaffrey? We've got 3 great running backs. God damn it. His dad was on my dad's team and we won. I'll have him and we'll win again. Okay, Kyle, you weirdo. Here's the difference though. I think if you gave Kansas City and put them in the NFC West, Patrick Mahomes might have thrown for 45 touchdowns this year and like 10 interceptions. Because I love the NFC because I'm a Cowboy fan, but you and I, the whole reason we were like, there's a window here, it's because the NFC is really not that good all around. And I think when you saw San Francisco play the Ravens, you see what happens when they play a team that is as physical as them. And I'm not saying that San Francisco is not physical. They are. But them being the most physical team in the NFC only puts them as like maybe the 3rd or 4th most physical team in the AFC. Because I think defensively the Browns are physical. I think, of course, the Ravens overall. I think the Chiefs overall. I think when you look at, even I'm trying to think of it, even Buffalo. We think of Josh Allen, but Buffalo is a physically built team, even through all the injuries defensively. I think a lot of San Francisco's numbers are because the NFC is not as good as the AFC.
Well, one, going into the season, you and I only thought 3 teams were going to make the Super Bowl out of that conference, and one of them did.
Yep.
The other 2 just faltered in the first round. The other thing, I completely agree. Like the Ravens, they destroyed the 49ers and San Francisco, and then they annihilated the other team in the title game, the Lions, in Baltimore. So that right there shows to me the superior.
I thought like 28-0 or 21-0. It wasn't even close because that was the Lions' first loss, wasn't it?
First or second? Oh no, it was their second because I remember they had that random home loss to the Seahawks.
Because we knew that was going to happen because they beat Kansas City. You and I called it that night. Lions are going to lose that second week. That's the kind of stuff. If you want to talk about is the game fixed? Look at weird things like that. They're the crowning team the week of. They beat Kansas City. Oh, my God, the Lions are real. And then they go and lose. It also just shows you how close the NFL is and all that. But, yeah, I forgot about the Ravens and Lions. And I don't know. I still feel like San Francisco is not too different than Dallas in that. And I know all teams play better when they're front running. And I know they just came back against the Lions historically. But, man, I still feel like that was as much as everything the Lions were doing wrong as much as what the Niners were doing right. It felt like to me the Niners were on the ropes all game long until the Lions started to kind of spit in the bit.
Yeah, it was just a sequence of events in the third quarter that doomed the Lions. They replay that game, the Lions win. It was that 4th and 2 call. It was great call, bad execution.
Yeah.
The other 4th down call was bad. Yeah, they should kick the field goal. There was a bad call to begin with, and they didn't convert.
And a bad play call. Yeah, that's a good point. Both of those. One of them a good play call, bad execution. The other one I didn't like the play call or the play call, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, man, I don't know. I don't think the Chiefs are going to roll them. I do think San Francisco's way too talented, but I don't think the Chiefs struggle as much as they did when they met a couple years ago. I think the Chiefs win this like 35-17.
Okay, I can see that. Who wins the MVP?
Mahomes.
Okay. Do you think any of the Kansas City receivers are going to show off?
What do you mean? Only have 2 drop passes instead of the normal 4? I think that you'll see Mahomes. Well, I want to say that you'll see Mahomes only trust a couple, but I mean, hell, he threw it to Scandling on what basically decided the game against the Ravens. So maybe he truly does just believe in everybody. I have a feeling if Mahomes doesn't win the MVP, it's going to be because Kelsey wins it with like a 12 catch, 3 touchdown. But I could see it being like 12 catches, 90 yards. Because if you notice, they kind of started figuring out, hey, let's just use Kelsey 5 yards in. Let's just do that. And that's what they did against the Ravens. He had a lot of catches. He had touchdowns, but he didn't have his, 5 catches, 180. It was like 9 catches, 100 yards or something like that.
Well, like with teams that can't run, they usually throw screens. But with the Chiefs, if they can't run, they just throw a 4-yard pass to Kelsey.
Exactly. And then that always opens up Pacheco. And let's also remember, the Niners have had a couple games where their run defense and their passing defense. So as much as we talk about San Francisco's defense, and it was 3rd in yards allowed rushing, it was 8th in total yards, it was 14th in passing. They were just like Dallas. If they get to the quarterback, that pass defense looks scary. If they don't get to the quarterback, those corners do not hold up well. Again, that's where I go back to that offensive line for the Chiefs is so good. And I know teams at times have had trouble. I mean, have had success getting to Mahomes, but again, he doesn't go down easy. So he's almost adding like an extra offensive lineman to the play because it's not just getting to Mahomes. You've then got to bring him down. And I don't know. And it's not you're a Cowboy fan. I don't hate San Francisco. You and I, we don't hate any team. We hate the Eagles. Y'all go fuck off. Everybody else we're perfectly fine with. Even though we admit that, damn it, some of the guys on the Eagles we actually like. Screw y'all. I'm not picking because San Francisco win. It doesn't do anything for me. They win. Okay, great. They won. I don't care. I'm just looking at the game. I just think Kansas City is way better than their stats because I think we're going to look back 5 years, 10 years from now and realize how stacked this AFC was. You and I differ. You always say, and you were right, 2 years ago, you weren't high on the AFC. I've been high on the AFC for the last couple of years. Last year, they took a dip because of injuries. This year, they still had injuries, but you still had, to me, 1 through 10 teams that were all really competitive and really good. And even the teams that didn't make the playoffs, if they went over the NFC, they probably win a couple divisions.
The Colts, even with Gardner Minshew, is a good example of that. Yeah, so 2 years ago when the Titans had the number 1 seed and Mike Vrabel was their coach, they were the best team in the AFC at that time. They got upset in the divisional round, but yeah, to me that's what when I was saying that that conference wasn't that good, it was because of that. It was I just see all these teams like Cincinnati. You didn't know how good they really were going to be. They were I think 10-7 that season. Kansas City got destroyed by the Titans during the regular season. I think it was like 27-3.
I remember that game.
So you just didn't know if whoever comes out of the AFC, they should get destroyed by whoever comes out of the NFC. It ended up being a pretty close game. The Bengals almost beat the Rams, but yeah, now you're seeing even with injuries, Buffalo, that's one of the more dangerous teams in football. Kansas City, they're winning with running game and solid defense.
Yep.
Bengals had a winning record. That whole AFC North, all 4 teams had a winning record. And all 4 of those teams would have been dangerous.
And 2 of them were backup quarterbacks.
Cleveland had their 4th-string quarterback who they got off the couch, Joe Flacco.
Well, Steelers were technically on their 3rd string.
Yeah. And Mike Tomlin somehow got them to 10 wins. I don't know what they're going to do going forward, but Rooney was. It really sounds like they're wanting to do better.
I'm going to admit this. I wouldn't have said this 4 years ago when he was throwing helmets at players. If I'm Pittsburgh, I kind of might run with Mason Rudolph. He kind of feels like what he does and what they like to do offensively run game, play action deep. And Mason Rudolph throws a really pretty deep pass. And that's why Canada or whatever you want to call them, never
Matt
was.
Canada, yeah.
They were trying to do more shorter routes and all that. And that's just not what Pittsburgh does. I mean, since 1990, it's handoff, play action over the top. Run with that. And I kind of like Mason Rudolph. I don't know why. Because he's never been anything. He was, I mean, in Oklahoma State, he was good, but he was never great. But I don't know. It felt like that was the Pittsburgh that you're used to seeing the last 5 weeks of the season.
What was his record against the Longhorns?
Well, I don't know, actually. That's a good question.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think with Mason Rudolph, they were more back to old school Steelers football. They actually played somewhat decent against the Bills in the wild card round. They lost, I think, 31-17, but no one thought they were going to win that game. Buffalo Bills were on a roll. I know the Steelers had won 3 games in a row.
Different, though.
Yeah. But I think this year, the Rooney family is going to expect a step forward for the Steelers. I think 11, 12 wins will be bare minimum what they expect. Competing for the division title, winning a playoff game. I think for the first time in Mike Tomlin's 17 years, he might actually be on the hot seat.
I think he definitely is. I think he's got to get to the playoffs this year. I think anything else, and you're starting to get into that Jason Garrett 8-8, where you're just good enough to keep them, but you're afraid to make that change. That's why this year I'm excited. Honestly, like I'm still gonna be a hate fan just because that's gonna be a fun bit to do all year. But I genuinely, by what Jerry Jones said, I'm gonna buy into what he said. Because you can say what you want about Jerry Jones, but Jerry Jones has always been very open about what he thinks. We're going to do this or we're not going to do this. And they usually stick to it. Now, I don't want to see them going so over the top in that they cripple themselves from 5 years. But I think they've watched the Bucks, who supposedly went all in with Tom Brady, and the Rams, who supposedly went all in with Matt Stafford and Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald re-signing him and a couple of other guys, and realize that you can kind of still do both. You can go all in, but be smart about it and still come out on the other side where, yeah, you might have a year or two where you take a step back, but you're not talking about 3-14 and having to rebuild for 5 years. You can do both.
Yeah, you can definitely do both. But it really seems each of these teams are, especially in the NFL, you can't really just tank like the Astros did in baseball for 3 years and then build up a farm system. They want immediate improvements the very next year. I mean, what Houston did this year with Stroud and DeMeco Ryans, their offensive coordinator was getting some head coaching looks, Bobby Slovic.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're on their way back, and they only took them 1 year. And I thought they were in worse condition than any team in football. So,
now, in saying that, they've still kind of punted down the field a little bit. They're still going to have to figure out some stuff. Like for the Rams, you're still going to have to figure out life after Stafford. Like, how many more years do you feel like he's going? Now, again, we're in a different era. For him, I think it's just how long does he want to play? Like, I know he had the bad arm, part of this year and especially all of last year, but it seemed like he feels like he's healthy and all that. I don't think he's like wore down or anything, but you're still going to have to make a decision soon about him. But yeah, I think we all thought, we all thought Sean McVay was going to quit simply because he was like, okay, I'm going to go somewhere else because this is going to be in hell for 10 years. And lo and behold, he talks about how this has been his most enjoyable year of coaching because it's not easy to coach. It's more enjoyable to coach when you have no expectations and you surprise everybody. All right, so let's wrap this one up.
They did.
Yes, they did. And they're a scary team next year if they make the right choices. And the way they've built rosters, something tells me that they know how to make choices. All right, give me your final score. My final score, 35-17. I think it's a closer game inside the game. I don't think the Chiefs jump out 17-0 or anything. I think it's back and forth. But I think in that second half, you start to see we still value champion quarterbacks. And I think you'll start to see Mahomes start to stretch out that offense. And I don't know if San Francisco can answer against a very underrated and maybe the best part of the team, Kansas City defense.
I really want to go for the 49ers here because it'll kind of justify the 7-year process with John Lynch at GM, Kyle Shanahan at coach, and the roster they built. Yeah, I told you, I love the way they play.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I love that they have a Swiss Army knife at running back and Christian McCaffrey and a Swiss Army knife at receiver, Deebo Samuel. Having said all that, I love Fred Warner. He's my favorite linebacker in the NFL. Having said all that, Kansas City, I can't say 35 because you already said it, so I'm going to say 42. San Francisco 10. I think it's going to be a blowout.
I'm only the only reason I'm not going 35-10 is I still think San Francisco's offense is good enough, and the Chiefs, they do have a drive or two a game where they kind of and they oddly enough they tend to give up points at the beginning of the game. Difference is you can actually see their adjustments, unlike Dallas. Let's just keep doing the same thing. Hey, wait a minute, ball boy, go play linebacker. You're small enough.
I can't wait for our live show next week when we're completely wrong about this score.
And we're going to be hungover. It's going to be Monday night after the game. Yeah. It might be out-puke the coverage. I mean, sitting there with my chocolate milk. If people don't know, that's my hangover cure is chocolate milk, and it really does work. But chocolate milk in a bucket and just every, let's talk about All right. That's going to do it for this week. This will be our last technical in-season show because next week will be the first of the off-season, which will be a live stream. We're also doing the coaches show that we're talking about. Then we will, starting next week, we'll plan out the schedule for y'all and tell y'all what we're going to do on the off-season. But until then, he's intern Noah, and I'm Terry Bennett, and this has been Grandeur Pest Solutions. OutDrank the Coverage.